All right, I don't want to talk too much about economic indicators because there are enough YouTube channels already covering that. But what I do want to cover in this video is I want to talk about Project Genesis, because there's a massive opportunity for you and for me to be a part of something really big, and not just be a part of it, to actually create it together. And if you're serious about crypto, by the way, if you're someone who believes and understands that the way economies work and become managed and who they get managed by are going to change because we influence it, this is going to be a video you're really going to like. However, if you're just looking for trading videos and you just want some quick videos on how to make money trading, etc., this is not going to be a video for you. You don't want to watch this. This is for serious players who want to do some game-changing stuff. And it's like one of the wizards actually who are on this channel, who I met in person, said to me, you know, think back to Steve Jobs, who said to the owner of Pepsi, do you want to make sodas or do you want to change the world? Like, do you want to do something big? And Project Genesis, once you actually conceptually understand the three principles and the three projects behind Project Genesis, you realize that fundamentally there are problems that we need to solve together. And when we do, it's going to change the way economies work and function and are driven, etc. It's a very, very important video. The first thing I wanted to dive into over here is the inverted yield curve. Now, some of you might have seen videos on YouTube already talking about this. I find it fascinating. But if you look at this graph here, we're going back into an inverted yield curve here on the bonds. And so when I look at this before, every 1 to 2 years after that's happened, you can see that we've had a recession. So these gray bars over here represent a recession. So like clockwork, every time we go negative into an inverted yield curve, we're heading into a recession, and we're literally just about to get to that. If you look at our debt to GDP, this is in the US, it's over 100%. So it's gone over 100%, and this was quite a long time ago as well. I mean, this is over 100%, meaning we have more debt than income coming in a whole nation. And by the way, if you're not in the US, if you're not in the USA, that really doesn't matter. Every single economy is pretty much pegged to the US dollar. And, you know, Nicholas Merten said it himself, if the US dollar fails, pretty much everything fails. So our transition going from dollar to digital currency needs to be done in an intelligent way. We don't want it to be anarchy. We don't want to do it when, you know, when things are really bad and then we have no other choice but to jump to that currency. Actually, what makes sense is to start building economies now. Now, why am I showing you these graphs over here? Well, the reason is because since 1971, when we let go of the gold standard, and I'm not saying the gold standard, which is what used to back money up, and for those of you out there who don't know what money is, it's totally fictional, it's created, it's man-made. Get with the program on this, and if you want more videos on that, I'm happy to talk about them. Your money is not backed up by gold. If everyone went into a bank today and was like, give me my ounce of gold or whatever for this promissory note, which is where the word note came from, you would not get it. So since 1971, we've been using fictional levers in economics to change the way that people behave. So, you know, inflation goes up when you do quantitative easing, when you go and print money to soften volatility, etc. in a currency. I don't want to go into the detail, but inherently we've screwed it up. And the reason we've screwed it up comes down to human nature. It comes down to the fact that we don't want to take the pain for something we should have taken the pain for. So what we're doing, and the reason why debt is just increasing and increasing and increasing, the reason why the debt for the US dollar and in the West especially, and in other countries too, is just increasing, Japan, China as well, just increasing, is because we're delaying pain. We are making the future generation, or the future, this generation, pay for all the fixes that we're putting in place now. And so this is very, very dangerous. This is very dangerous because sooner or later what's going to happen is people are going to lose their belief in a currency, and it's going to become like the Zimbabwean dollar, and people are going to be carrying wheelbarrows of money to go and buy bread. In other words, the money is going to become totally worthless. And so what we want to do is, instead of allowing, you know, corrupt politicians or whatever, and I'm not saying all politicians are corrupt, but there are corrupt politicians, and instead of allowing, you know, any powers that be to regulate a currency, why not build rules into the blockchain and build rules that actually safeguard and protect and make sure that the system that we're using is going to continue to make sense. And so, with this as a precursor, I was actually really fortunate because myself, my best friend and business partner, John, who actually came with me, we went to go and see Nicholas Merten do a talk. Nicholas Merten, if you don't know, is the host of the channel DataDash on YouTube. For those of you who follow Nick and his channel, you'll know that I think he's probably the biggest channel in the YouTube space. In other words, Nick has a lot up here and he has a lot to share. And I've been following his channel for quite a long time. And let me tell you, when you meet Nick in person, you realize, number one, he's even more genuine than he comes across on camera. And he legitimately is launching a project that he's doing no ICO for. He's literally not trying to take any money for this concept. His vision is to see this idea of us building in rules into the blockchain that reward the system in the right way, that allow for banking type transactions to happen in a way that's legit and well controlled. He has a very, very strong vision for this. And he's actually come up with 3 very, very strong principles that the digital economy is fundamentally going to need. And he's come up with them, and what he's trying to do is work with people who are motivated in the space like I am and like you are to actually make that happen. That means we need to talk. And I wanted to present in this video principle number 1 that Nick really went through. And the cool thing is, Nick, we got to hang out with him the day after the presentation and spend time with him and Cristo. So Cristo on Crypto, which is a podcast as well. Cristo was there too, also highly intelligent guy, really smart guy. And these guys have vision. And really what they're trying to do is pull together teams of people who can work and collaborate together to build solutions that are proven and tested and can be put out in the marketplace to use. And so these ideas are quite profound. And the first idea I want to talk about is ledger analysis. So this is a principle that I'm going to get my pen tool over here. I think is fundamentally very, very interesting. And it's the first principle. And by the way, there's peer-to-peer lending as well and how that really needs to work too, etc. I'm going to talk about that in future videos. But right now I want to talk about this ledger analysis because this is going to be game changing. And I'll tell you why. If you think about any cryptocurrency solution out there right now, you have your miners that get rewarded and you have your validators that get rewarded. But what about your users? The people actually using the coin, there's really very little incentive most of the time for them to use that coin. Well, what if you could have a system that you could deploy into any ledger, any blockchain ledger, that has a set of rules that reward the user? So the user gets rewarded as well. And the way, Nick explains it is, it's kind of like getting cash back for using a credit card. If you go and spend money on a credit card, you get air miles, you get points, you get rewards, etc. So we really want a blockchain system or an ecosystem that can really work that way. And so Nick put this challenge out there because he mentioned, look, he said the minute that you have any kind of solution like this, you're going to have people that try to game the system, people that try to take advantage of flaws in the system. And so what we really need to do is we need to build a system that safeguards from people trying to game the system. And so he's put that challenge out there to people, and myself and John, we really got into this. We really went into one. We were even having meetings on it because we realized the gravitas of solving this problem and what it would do for an entire economy. And so we went to work. And Project Genesis, by the way, there is a link to it over here. I'm going to put it in the video description too. But you can go and download the white paper. This is not an ICO, by the way. Nick is not asking for any money. I need to make that really clear. This is for people who are actually interested in doing real problem solving or donating to a good cause or working and collaborating to build MVPs, etc., that actually work that you and I can use. This is a community-based driven project. So I want to make that clear. And in that white paper, Nick does a really good job of giving an example of how a reward-based system in cryptocurrency could work. And so, over here, you'll see that there's some transactions up here. And I've sort of elaborated a little bit on the white paper to put some more transactions on here to really give you a feel for what's going on. But let's say that every time you're involved in a transaction in crypto, you get rewarded. Now, if you're sending coin, you get rewarded more than if you're receiving coin. So you get a score as a user. Just stick with me here. I'm going to explain how this works. So if you spend money, your total spending value in coin multiplied by 5 plus your total receiving value, if you're receiving coin, multiplied by 3 equals your spending value. So that's going to be your total spending value score. And so you get a weighting, basically. This multiplied by 5 basically gives it a weighting. And it's very clever, actually, what Nick's suggesting there. And I do agree with this approach, because what it's doing is it's incentivizing spending. And when you look at the signs of a good, healthy economy, consumer spending is really up there at the top. You know, recession happens when people just stop spending, they lose confidence. And so what we want is we want velocity, we want spending, we want people adopting and using that currency. And if you want me to talk about things like velocity and what that all means, etc., just put velocity in the comments and how to value a currency, etc. And I can talk more on that, but I don't want to detract from the point. The point is that the more interaction you have in the ecosystem, in the cryptocurrency system, the more reward you get. So Alice, for example, is getting rewarded a lot here. And Sarah, for example, over here is getting rewarded a lot for this transaction too, because Alice is sending a lot of coin, and so is Sarah. Sarah's sending a lot of coin here. And so in return, you know, they're getting a lot of coin back. Now, basic economics, right? You're going to be like, okay, well, where is that coin coming from? You know, how are they receiving that benefit? And this, you know, in here lies an issue that needs to be resolved. And I actually have a proposal here in this video, which it might not work, but I wanted to put it out there because it's this sort of discussion of what will and might not work that really brings value to this. Because when we solve this problem, we're actually solving a problem that is going to drive the behavior of entire economies in the future. And I mean every economy. This will drive how every economy operates. This is a big deal. This is a big thing to be a part of. And so when I think about it, really what we're thinking about doing is, you know, you actually mint these coins. So you pull them a little bit out of the ether, and meaning that what's happening is you're also increasing the supply of coin. Now, as you know, in finance, if you increase the supply of money, it's a little bit like quantitative easing. If you increase the supply of money, the cost of things goes up as well, because you're putting more money in the circulation in the system. And what we want to do is regulate this. We don't want this issue where it's getting to a critical zone and all of a sudden everything's going up in price, inflation's, you know, kicking off. Then you need all these other levers you need to pull. And it's a bit like what happens in businesses too. You know, there's a problem, and then instead of fixing the problem, people put a bandage on it, and then that bandage starts bleeding out. So they're like, oh, we better stick some tape over it as well, and we better do this and we better do that. You know, the approach that I'm suggesting we take from a mindset point of view here is much more around how do we come up with something so simple and basic that it just works and you don't need bandages. And so my recommendation over here, and John and I were discussing this, is, you know, you mint these coins and you're increasing supply, but now you actually need to reduce that supply. And so there's a reserve here held by the cryptocurrency. And, you know, when this tank is full, it can pour out some tokens into the system. And at some point, what we need to start doing is introducing tax. Now, I know you guys out there, you crypto enthusiasts who hate tax, who want to stick it to the man and that, I get it. But I mean tax in a good way, and tax unlike how it's being done today. And what we do is, who do you tax? And my view of it is like this. You know, let's take two people. I'm going to draw two people here because, you know, I love drawing. So we're going to take two people. I'm going to have, you know, Bob over here. Bob is a rich businessman. He's been involved in a lot of transactions. He's received a lot of rewards, etc. And he's been, you know, he's been doing a lot of spending. So he's had a lot of cash coming in. And so Bob's a pretty happy guy. He's got lots of coin. He's got, you know, 5 million coin. And Sarah is going to be the other person that we're going to talk about over here. So we've got Sarah. Now, Sarah is a single mom, and she doesn't have a business or anything like that. She's just trying to get by. She's just spending coin on necessities that she needs to get by. And Sarah doesn't have, very much money. In fact, she's only got about 500 coin. And so when I think about tax, I think, in my opinion, and it's up to you guys what you think, tax should be proportional. Even though tax rates are lower for people who earn less money in the world as we know today, $10 to Sarah, or 10 monkeys, or whatever coin it is, can actually mean baby milk for a kid. Like, the number 10 is a big number, whereas to someone like Bob, like 10 is nothing. It's not proportional. And so what we want to do, rather than just doing an even split and percentage tax on everyone, is to say, okay, there's a threshold. So people who hold under this balance get 0 taxed. People who hold this amount of balance, they get X tax. And people who have the higher balance, and this is where I think the good idea comes in, they get taxed more. And the reason for that is, and what that's going to encourage is it's going to discourage gaming the system and building up too much. It's going to encourage flow and spending, etc., because you want to manage your tax levels as well. But it's also going to encourage people to spend because they're going to be able to gain that reward and spend that reward on things that generate value for them, or whatever they perceive as value, just like all consumer spending. And so our proposal is as simple as this. You have a reserve tank. When it's full, you can pour money into the economy to reward people. However, when the reserve tank is empty with coin, and this is your minting reserve tank, when it's actually empty down here, what you have to do is you have to actually do a tax call, and that pulls coin back out of the system, and you tax the amount of coin that you need to pull out of the system based on, starting from order of priority, the people holding the most coin and downwards. And so the reason why I think that this sort of mint and tax approach works is it's just binary. There's just 2 levers you have to pull. And people get rewarded for when they circulate coin, meaning that from an economics point of view, it gets easier to predict how the flow of money is going to work, etc., and what levers need to get pulled for that. And also, these are hard rules. Now, people don't like the idea of tax. And, if we think of 2008, you know what 2008 was, right? The Big Short, you've seen the film. You think of 2008, the credit crunch, when the banks have basically stolen money from you. That's basically what had happened. And who pays for it? The consumer. But did the consumer really pay for that in 2008? No, not really. Because all that's happened is debt has gone up and up and up and up. So it's us paying for it, but in the future. And the reason for that is because, unlike back in the day, like when the Great Depression happened, which needed to happen to correct the economy, we're just delaying pain, and the pain is only getting bigger. So yeah, I understand like the idea of taxing, etc. It's not a nice idea, and why should people who have more money get taxed more? I get all of that. I get the objections. But look, in any system like this, you're not going to please everyone. And so this is really a proposal I want to put forward to you guys to be like, is this a way where we could make a system like ledger analysis work so that users can get rewarded for transacting in the system, and that can bring adoption to the cryptocurrency, and also through the minting / tax on the reserves, we can make sure. And by the way, I want to just mention this over here. By the way, when we're talking about reserves, right now, who are the reserves? The Federal Reserve, right? There are people who benefit from playing the system, which means it can be corrupted. But in a blockchain-based system, it's binary, it's mathematical, it's built into the system, it's all operated by the system. So everything that happens is just fair. And if you come into the system, you as a person, you come into the system, you're coming in because you decide to, you understand the rules, and you can see the value in being in that system. And the reason you can see the value is because the value is here, you get it instantaneously. The minute you start transacting, you're getting rewarded. And so this is really our proposal for how we could deploy ledger analysis. Now, please let me know what you guys think in the comments, because there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, I'd like to have, next time I get the privilege of speaking with Nick, I'd like to have a discussion with him about what your suggestions are, to let him know what the market is thinking about it, and their opinion and views, and your opinion and views of how this could work, how ledger analysis could work. What are your ideas? And I'd like to, you know, present that to Nick along with your name, etc., as an idea that you presented. Now, there are some resources as well that you can go to. There's a Discord group, etc. All here, you can just go to Project Genesis. I'll put them in the description as well. There's a Discord group. There's all sorts of ways that you can jump on board to support this project. But if anything, you know what, like if anything, it would just be cool to work on something together that is meaningful for the long term. So this is not going to change overnight, but why not be one of the pioneers that help to make something big and important happen? I hope that you enjoyed this video. Any questions, put them in, and make sure that you go and check out the white paper for Project Genesis. Talk soon.